He has studied and worked in the UK and Australia, but has grown up, in part, in South India. This has provided him with international expertise coupled with local knowledge. He runs Treescapes, is the steward of Espace Forest, and is part of the northern forests of Oroville.
I'd like to say thank you very much to everybody for coming here. I think this is really the sort of process that would unify people, that we can actually go forward in a positive manner that will be potentially an example for a lot of other communities and the world and ourselves even, hopefully. I'm going to be speaking about arboriculture and urban forestry. Arboriculture is the study and management of trees. It's with regards to generally more in urban settings. It's for smaller amounts of trees, so it's not silviculture, it's not horticulture, it's not forestry. It's generally more in an urban setting, so it's the inspection of trees for the assessment, for the risk assessment of trees. Within arboriculture, there's tree pruning, there's the assessment of trees for the risk that they pose in all settings. In a school, you want to inspect a tree to make sure that it's safe, that it's not going to fall down on the kids, that sort of thing. There's also with regards to development, to make sure that to identify trees, to categorize them, to say, okay, this is a tree that has a lot of potential, it's got a lot of long-term potential, we're going to keep it, we're going to make sure it's included in the scheme. This tree is a very common tree, it grows by itself, it's very short-lived, it's going to be less affecting the construction scheme. So it touches a lot of subjects, it's all related to trees, it even goes into the management of tree nurseries, all sorts of things. There's a lot of development that's occurred in arboriculture in the last 50 years. It's not something that's very common, but it's evolving quite a bit. In India, it's only very recently been introduced. But you do see in Hyderabad, for example, there's signposts saying this is part of the urban forestry scheme. Urban forestry is the management of trees within an actual urban setting, so in cities, to make sure, for example, a lot of cities now, and India, for example, it's got this goal to reach 33% canopy cover in India, where there's a lot of cities that have such goals. There's Singapore, there's all cities all over the world, they have a certain goal of canopy cover. So how much, if you were to if you were to look from the sky, would be covered by vegetation? That's the canopy cover. So, like I said, my name is Island. I've been working with trees for about 20 years now. Less than 20 years, but almost 20 years. I work as a forest manager, consulting arborist, and I've worked as a tree surgeon. So I've planted thousands of trees, but as a tree surgeon, I've also cut thousands of trees. So I've dismantled, I've pruned, I've felled about, a few thousand trees. So it's just to give you an idea that I have a bit of a perspective on planting trees and removing them. So it means that when I look at a tree, whether it's to plant it or to take it down, there's quite a lot of consideration that goes into the process. The first thing... Yes. We can, in the question and answers, I'd like to go further into that if you'd like. We're going to go first with it's a 4-part presentation. Let's go into part 1. The first thing I'd like to do is, what do you think of, what are the effects of trees? I just want to take a really quick survey, because I know that there's a lot of education, a lot of awareness, a lot of more sort of broadening of the subject that needs to occur. Like I said, urban forestry is a very new subject in India as well. So please shout out, what are the effects of trees?
Cooling, or regulation.
Wildlife.
Sorry?
Shades.
Psychological health.
Beauty.
Okay, cool. I just wanted to keep a very short thing. It's good. We're getting a lot of different aspects to it, which is a lot more than just shade and aesthetics, which is sort of the main story generally. So let's go into it. We're going to quantify this a little bit. So everybody thinks, oh yeah, it's cooler to stand under a tree. How much cooler is it? This is an infrared or thermal imaging camera. The lighter it is, the hotter it is, the cooler it is, the darker it is. So where it's really cool, it's under the tree. Where it's really hot, it's outside. You've got 20 degrees of difference. If you were to look at this in summer here, you'd probably get up to 30 degrees. Yeah, this is just to show you that you can quantify a lot of this stuff. You can put a monetary value as well onto it if you really want to. So it's not just shade, it protects from UV rays, which protects from skin disorders, which a lot of people know in Australia, for example, and a lot of places. Here less because the complexion of the skin is more adapted to that sort of thing. But yeah, it's more than just temperature. Here's a really quick thing that I grabbed from Australia. Just one tree per year works as 10 air conditioners, 2,500 liters of stormwater. It intercepts and absorbs, so it stops it from just running into the sea in the case of around here. And it grabs a lot of pollutants from the air. It's phytoremediation, it's called. I'm just going to go very quickly through this stuff. All of this is peer-reviewed, and all of this is part of another presentation that I do, which is the effects of trees. So this is just a short bit of that so that we can carry on with all aspects that I think are important for today's presentation. Generally, where you've got forests, you've got water. If you remove the forest, you're going to remove the water. There's some understanding here that trees deplete the aquifers, that if you plant trees, then you're sucking the water out of the ground. It's contrary, actually. It's completely the opposite. In the case where there's the groundwater that's very shallow, so it's very near to the surface, it can be used for that. So it can help in agriculture, for example. So if there's a lot of water logging, you can plant some trees and it'll reduce the water table, but it's up to maybe 3 meters. We're not talking about what we're looking at here, which is 20 meters plus of an aquifer depth. So trees, vegetation brings water. It does not take water away. Here's, if I were to go into it in my presentation for water management, stormwater management. So this is what happens when it rains. The leaves catch the water. They slow it down from reaching into the ground, which means that if you have infrastructure that has to deal with storm water in a city, for example, it means you're dealing with less volume of water going down at one time because it's catching that much water. It's slowing it down through, it's called through fall. Another thing that somehow people think here that I've heard is that when you have trees next to roads, it's going to damage the roads because it makes big droplets going onto the roads. Well, actually, it slows it down. If you've stood under a tree when it's raining, you're getting less hit by the rain than if you're in the middle of nowhere. No. Anyway, this is again proven. I have a whole list of references if people want. It's all peer reviewed. I'm not going to go through all of this, but basically it's just to say that there's a lot of science that's gone into it, and it ticks all the boxes, let's say. So again, more vegetation, more water. Aha. So this, if we weren't running on a Linux system, this whole page would be covered in effects of trees. All of them positive. There are negative effects of trees, but in comparison, you would have a tiny portion which would be somewhat like this, and then the rest of the page is positive effects of trees and vegetation. I'm going to go very quickly through one aspect, which I think most people don't know, but it's the health benefits. And it's for example, there's been studies which show that children and adults have improved concentration rates in schools that have access to vegetation. These are big studies that are conducted. It reduces the stress of people. It improves their happiness. It makes them recover faster in hospitals when they've been sick or injured. What does that mean? That means people are more productive. That means that you need less facilities for health services because there's less people getting sick. So you need smaller services because there's less people getting sick at one time, which means people are more productive, which means the society as a whole is more productive. So everybody's winning actually here. So yeah. So if you were to quantify all these things, it all adds up. It adds up on many, many levels in a considerable way. It's okay. So all I wanted to say was most people think of CO2 and aesthetics when they think of trees, or there's a lot of that. There's a huge thing about CO2, CO2, CO2. CO2 is a very tiny aspect of trees. We should be thinking of trees as green infrastructure. We think of gray infrastructure. We think of blue infrastructure for water management in urban settings. Green infrastructure is a huge aspect nowadays. It's very, very prominent all over the world. Here's a comparison just to quantify things a little bit in a monetary form. This is from the US. Unfortunately, we don't have this data yet in India. We're getting there. This is done with iTree, which is a system that I'll introduce in a bit. But basically, this is the amount of dollars per tree per year that the state of Missouri, the state of Indiana, and the state of California, that's how much they've calculated they're getting per tree per year. Okay, so it's been categorized in different sections. This is the big one at the top is property or value or other. This doesn't concern us in Orville, but basically in some places, especially in California, you can see if you've got trees on your property and you want to sell it, it's going to sell for way, way more. There's that aspect. There's other comprises of a lot of things. But if we even take this off and take that off and take that off, and we only consider the lower ones, we've got stormwater, number one. A huge effect, huge effect, huge effect. So we're looking at $70 per tree per year on average. So this is not massive trees necessarily. This is just, whatever. I don't know what the start of the diameter of the stem is exactly, to be fair. But you want to look at carbon dioxide. This is carbon dioxide. Compare that to air quality, energy, and stormwater. It's minute. Yeah, this is just street trees, by the way. It's not parks, it's not trees in schools, it's not trees in people's backyards, it's just street trees.
The Missouri energy might well be your air conditioning that you were referring to.
Yeah. That's, here it would make, here we would have different values, but the energy is related to that mainly. But it's also related to, people using cars because it's hot. So they'll go in their car because there's AC. Otherwise, they'll take the bicycle because you're going under a tree. It's just, there's a lot of things that we take that we don't take in consideration. You can actually calculate tree return on investment if you're that sort of person. There's been papers written on it. 2 to 5 times, 7 to 20 times. It really depends on what you're looking at, how the scope of your study. But it can be huge. So how much does it cost to plant a tree and how much are you going to get out of it? You're going to get out up to 20 times, I would say probably even more. It just really depends on how you're doing it, if you're doing it really smart, basically. The main thing to consider when you're planting trees and taking them out is that you're not going to get any benefits for the first, these are the years. This is from the UK. I've done a lot of work in the UK, but this actually works for here, because here we're looking at the years, the age of the tree. Here we're looking at the value or the benefits that the trees provide. So when a tree is small, like this or like this, it's providing hardly any benefits. So you're planting a tree, and if you're going to cut it in 10 years, you've basically gotten 0 benefits from it. If you cut it in 20 years, you've gotten 0 benefits, or very, very few. If you're starting to look at 30, which is over here, or if you're 40 or 50, which is kind of where we're at now in Orville, then we're just about starting to get the benefits from them. So, we need to keep trees alive so that we get the benefits before they start losing the benefits, which is in a few hundred years. But, it's not much point in planting a tree to just then remove it. Yeah, so quickly, when people say, we're going to cut that tree and we're going to replant 10 trees, it doesn't make any sense at all. Because you cannot compare a fully grown tree, which is providing all these benefits, for a tree that's providing 0 benefits. In 20 years, you'll start getting those benefits, but for 20 years, you can imagine a bank account that's not giving you any money for 20 years. So in 20 years, it'll be great, but for those 20 years, you're not going to get anything. Part 2, some points to consider regarding trees in urban contexts, in urban settings, in the local context of Oroville. I keep on harping about evergreen trees. Here we have, everywhere in the world, you've got evergreen trees and you've got deciduous trees. Deciduous trees are the trees that lose their leaves at some time of the year. In temperate climates, it's usually in winter, but here it's in the summer. When do you want the shade? In the summer. That's why we want evergreen trees. This is just an example of some evergreen trees. You've got them this is in front of the vehicle service in the town hall, and they're all over the place. But there's some in Machamandir. They're really nice. They have really nice stems.
It's also sorry to interrupt, but it's also why the local species are by tropical dry evergreen forest, because that's
well. I'm getting to that. So the thing with evergreen trees is they grow more slowly. So you get smaller trees for a very long time because they take a really long time to grow. So a lot of these trees that you're looking around now, most of them will be deciduous trees. They're the ones that grow fast. So people are used to seeing, oh, that's a big tree, that's a good tree. The peepal tree just out there, for example, wow, that grows really fast. It's amazing. It's huge. It's deciduous. For 5 months of the year, there are no leaves on it. Sorry. Neem is a weird one. There's a lot of weird ones. There's a lot of gradients in nature. You can never sort of cut everything up. So there'll be some that are deciduous. There are some that are brevideciduous. The service tree, for example, loses its leaves in January, February, so just before it actually gets hot. So it's actually a really cool tree for that. There's a few others like that. There's not many. The rain tree, which is this one, which is just here, which grows really wide and really big, and you see on the way to Chennai along the roads, same sort of thing. It's deciduous, but it loses its leaves only when it's still cool, and then in the summer they come again. So you've got the shade. So there are those are the two basically trees that do that, along with the neem tree, which are exceptions to the rule. So the thing about evergreen trees is they're often much longer lived. What does that mean? Small investment, long return, because they're going to be around for hundreds of years. Whereas a lot of deciduous trees, they'll last, less than 100 years. In some cases, the work tree is usually about 25 years, maybe 30, 40 years. A lot of these deciduous trees are much shorter lived. The evergreen trees are much more resistant to storms, for example. They provide deeper shade. They support more life. It's got to do with the succession of species. If you study forestry, you're planting first. If you cut a whole forest down, for example, and you see what comes up to grow, it'll be things that pollinate themselves and that seed without insects and without animals. And then eventually, as the forest progresses, you'll get the evergreen trees, and they rely on mammals and birds and that sort of thing. So if you're planting evergreen trees, which you need to plant after you've provided the conditions for them, which is what sort of Oroville where we're at. We've planted a lot of trees that are deciduous to be able to make the conditions for these evergreen trees, which then can be able to grow. They need a longer establishment time, they need better conditions in the beginning, but then eventually once they establish themselves, they will be, they'll be solidly in place, and they will be much more resistant to changing climates. This was taken 4 years ago. I don't know if I'd still be able to get a shot like that now. With regards to the traffic. All I want to say here is that when you plant things closer together, then you're kind of following the forest model in a way, which is kind of what we're doing when we're planting in super urban settings. You're always trying to recreate this sort of forest setting in an urban setting, which is a very tricky thing. It's much more difficult to plant things in urban settings. But one thing to keep in mind is if you've got trees closer together, you're going to have a higher canopy, which means that they're going to go higher for the light to reach the light, which means there'll be more insulation from the top to the bottom, which means it'll be cooler. If you've got your trees, growing up to 5 meters and then they start going sideways, with the branchment, then you're only going to have 5 meters of insulation with the ground. If they need to get to 20 meters to be able to get their light, then you're going to have a lot more insulation. You'll have much cooler conditions. That's one aspect. The second aspect is that they're more sheltered. They're going to be more resistant to storms when they're closer together. There's no space in between them, so if they move about, they'll knock onto the other trees, so they're not necessarily going to smash on the ground. Their roots are also intertwined under the ground. You have trees growing next to each other. There's a lot of roots, intermingling. That keeps trees together. And obviously, easier environmental conditions. Where there are more trees together, there's more shade, so the ground stays humid much longer. There's more microorganisms in the ground. It's more able to percolate the water, so it's just a much more alive system. If you've got one tree and you've got a desert in between and another tree, so for example along the Crown in front of the library and all that, we used to have a service tree. You had 20 meters and another service tree, so you've basically got a desert in between, which is really not helpful for these trees. They're very, very tough trees. They're growing in these conditions, but it's not at all ideal for them. This is what it looks like planting trees in super urban settings. It's possible. Yeah, absolutely. Costs are phenomenal. It's important to take much more into consideration the utilities, so the gray infrastructure, along with the green infrastructure. But here you can see this is really, really smart planning. You're looking at, you've got a little drain that drains into here. You'll have drains in here that goes into there. It's a whole system that works. You've got root protection. You've got barriers, root barriers that protect between this and that. But this is just to give you an idea of what it looks like. So it is possible to do it, but it's a whole different story. And maybe we'll be doing this in the future. At the moment, we're not doing it. It's just to give an idea of that these things do happen. One thing that needs to be considered when you put trees in these conditions is that if this was its only rooting volume, then your tree would be probably much smaller than it looks like right now. Because one of the major constraints of trees in urban settings is the soil root volume. So this is a calculation. It's not perfect, but it basically tells you that you need 50 cubic meters for a large tree to grow. So what does that mean? Tree roots generally go, and I'll show you a slide next, they only go about 60 centimeters into the ground. So 95% of tree roots will be at 60 centimeters or above, or from the ground level to 60 centimeters down. They won't go further down because there's no oxygen. So they usually spread out a lot more. So what does that mean? That means if you're looking at 50 cubic meters, you're looking at 5 meters by 10 meters. 5 meters by 10 meters, that's how much a big tree needs to grow healthy. If you've got trees that are in sections that have, if you have one tree here and one tree there and they can share that soil volume, then you can reduce the soil volumes because in nature there's a lot more cooperation than we think actually. So this just gives you a bit of an idea. So what happens to this area here? Well, it has to be protected from compaction, because when you've got compaction, you have reduced oxygen that can reach into the ground. You have the pore spaces which are reduced, which means it doesn't get oxygen. And trees also need oxygen. They need to respire. They use energy like we do. They use exactly the same process, actually. And you have reduced air spaces and you have reduced water if you have compaction. This is a healthy soil. You can see the roots are going. This is just representative. You can look at the canopy. Yeah, so moist, lots of nutrients, not compacted. Hey, it works. This is an unhealthy soil. You remember where this was? Look at that. There's the roots, and there's the full picture. Okay? So it's important that the soil is protected from compaction. So in urban settings, it's a whole different story than in forest settings. In forest settings, you can walk around and you'll notice it's really soft, the ground. If you start going around here, you'll notice it's actually really, really hard. And that means that there's compaction. I use the British standard for the work that I do. It's the sort of the qualifications that I've got are using that. When you're considering developing or working around trees, you will calculate the stem diameter of a tree at 1.5 meters from the ground, which then gives you the root protection area So that's the area that shouldn't be damaged within the area of a tree. That's 12 times the diameter. It depends on the tree, it depends where the roots are going, it depends on the soil, it depends on a lot of things, but it's just a broad figure that gives you a benchmark. Again, because the roots are only going down about 60 centimeters, the majority of them, so you need to think, a 1 meter tree will have a 12 meter radius of roots that need to be protected. Again, it varies very much, it varies also on the species, but it's something to keep in mind. Like I was saying, to avoid compaction, this is how you would see under the pavement in the urban setting. So what is this stuff? It's kind of like Lego blocks. And they get stacked and you'll have another layer under. And so you've got the utilities going around, but basically it's all to stop it from getting compacted. And in these systems, you've got really high-tech systems nowadays. In this particular system, you can get 90% of this space here is actually soil. So there's a huge amount of soil, which is what you're trying to do. There's a lot of different systems. There's the Amsterdam soil, which is another system where you're mixing a lot of like blue metal into the soil. So you're making sure that you can't compact the soil, and in between you've got just loose soil. Except when you do that, then you have lots of rocks, which means you have less soil volume. So here you've got a maximum amount of soil rooting volume in a minimum amount of space, which is what you have to. If you're putting trees in London, you've got, it's the same thing. We humans have to build up. Well, for the trees, they're doing the opposite. They're making these root spaces going down.
What material is that?
These are strata cells. This is from Green Blue Urban. It's these guys up here. But you can get them in India. There's, I forget the name, but it's available. It's obviously not something you buy all the time. It's really expensive stuff. It's also controversial because it's plastic. This particular one is made out of recycled ocean plastic waste. You decide whatever you want. These things are incredibly tough. I saw this picture on the Green Blue Urban. I couldn't help myself. I'm sorry. So it's resistant to compaction. It's actually resistant to a lot more than just a JCB. It's, you can actually make roads with this stuff. So you can put your tree, you can put the road, you can have this stuff under it, and it won't be compacted. You can have lorries driving on it. Costs are there. This all ties into appropriate management of trees, which means we're not damaging them unnecessarily. This is in Orville. This is where we're at. This is the reality of the situation. We are digging trenches, within, well within the root protection area. We're damaging the stems directly. This is just peeled all of that. What does it mean? It means that we're going to end up with green infrastructure that's not, providing the services that we're wanting, the ecosystem services. So we're going to have to replace them. We're going to have to spend more money than we're saving for that. This is an example so this is not judging, this is just showing what it is. This is where we're at. So what does this do? It makes it structurally unstable. So luckily this Vengai, so this is Pterocarpus marsupium, which is a timber species, which is from around here. I can't remember if it's Kalimardu or Pilimardu. It's one of the two. We've chopped, structural roots that have removed its tensile strength. The tree is leaning like this, and we've removed this. So that makes it structurally unstable, which means it can fall down, which means it's a liability now. It's no longer an asset. So if somebody's driving by and it falls on their heads, suddenly we've got a huge problem. Or the person that's there has probably a much bigger problem. Or no problems anymore at all. Physiologically impaired, so that means that its health is impaired. You're chopping off huge parts of its anatomy. A lot of trees store their energy in their roots, in their root systems. So this is stored energy that's gone. And obviously now it has to spend energy to regrow this stuff. The timber rate what people don't realize is that you can do this, and in a lot of development schemes, that's what happens, is that the contractors come, somebody likes a tree, they build the house right next to the tree is still standing when everything is done and dusted, and they're gone. 5 years later, the tree starts declining. 10 years later, the tree is dead. That's because a lot of stuff, when you're looking at trees, it takes a really long time to happen. So what's going to happen here? There's going to be decay that's going inside here. And eventually it goes into the stem, and depending on, there's a whole host of different types of fungi and bacteria. They all have very particular strategies. Some of them go for the inside of the wood, some of them go for exposed sapwood, some of them go for under the roots. It all depends on the strategy of the fungi, just like everybody's got a different sort of business strategy. But basically this timber, which could have been an asset for Oroville in the future, could become a liability, and we won't even get any timber out of it. So, we're saving a few hundred rupees, and we're wasting 50,000 rupees, or whatever it is. That's just a random figure. So we need to think about the long-term gain that far outweighs the short-term cost reductions. This is what happens. These are the negative effects of trees. This is in the UK. This is, I don't know what it is exactly, but it's got little kids. This is why tree inspections were made mandatory in the UK. At some point, a big tree fell on a major intersection and killed a few people, and suddenly people started saying, well, if it's absolutely obvious that this tree is going to fall down, there's no reason why it should stay here. It doesn't mean you can't predict every single tree. Every single tree that's standing has a certain level of risk. The idea is that we've got an acceptable level of risk. In the UK, that means 1 in 10,000 chance of falling down, which you can try and figure out what that means. But it just means that if it's really obvious that a tree is going to fall down and somebody inspects it, then it really needs to be taken down. It's called the duty of care, basically. This is Quillapollum. This is what happened after this cement road got put in right next to this tamarind tree. I don't know if you can recognize it. This is where the guy that's been making leather shoes for the last, I don't know how many years, decades, is. This is the main center in Quillapollum. All these roots were just chopped straight off. So there was no more tensile strength. The compressive strength got impeded by the decay that occurred within, and it just fell straight down. Puff. There we go. Whatever. I don't know how old that tamarind tree was, but it's needless destruction. It can be easily avoided, basically. Or in this case, it depends. I mean, it's always costs versus. It's not black and white. I'm not saying it's black and white. It's a lot of the time it's very difficult to make the decision. But we need to think about how much value this was bringing to that area in comparison to how much this road is bringing to the area. There's a huge amount of traffic now, so it might be that the road is more important. I don't know. This is just to show that there's a lot of ways that we can work around trees without damaging them. This is called an air spade, what he's using, this guy. And it's a pneumatic excavator, so it blows out air at Mach 2 through a nozzle. I've been trying to get one of these through a research project to actually look at how the roots around here look like, because nobody has any idea, actually, that much. But basically, you end up with this sort of result. So the roots are unaffected, and the gray infrastructure is unaffected, and you can make trenches. So it's a nozzle that's attached to a massive air compressor, which we have one of, actually, in the water service now. And so we could be doing this sort of stuff when we want to dig trenches, where we know that there's, some places you can dig with a JCB, there's no trees around, you can go really quickly. In other places, closer to the tree, you could be using this. Maybe some of you are also aware of this. This is a way to, it's called trenchless technology. You're digging around, you can dig around whatever you want. So it's just to say that, there's alternatives to just making trenches. Part 3. So this is the survey that we did with regards to the right-of-way and so it's an arboricultural survey about the rights-of-ways with regards to the crown and regards to the ring and the radials. Just to give people an idea of what's there. What does it mean? So this was done very quickly, in about a week. A whole bunch of us got together. Some areas were surveyed, others were not. I'll get into that. Yeah, this is the Crown. These are the areas where we surveyed. And the radials, the ring. So there's a whole report. I'm happy to share it with everybody. There's different aspects to the report. All of what I'm showing today will be available for people to have. So the presentation, the reports that I've been referencing to, the references, if you want them, please ask. The purpose of the report was to quantify the tree cover present and destroyed within the proposed Crown right-of-way, specifically, and also to have a look at how the effects within the ring and radials would also be there. I wasn't too sure whether to keep it on the Crown right-of-ways or to expand, so in the end I did, which is why probably it's missing the other bit here. Highlight alternatives that have been proposed. There's the proposed development to clear all the rights-of-ways, requirements 16.7, 4 to 20 meters wide on the radials, and the ring right-of-way is 21 meters wide. Limitations is we had a very short amount of time, so there may be some stuff which is not super accurate, but it's as accurate as we could make it within that limitation. What I would like to say is a project with this sort of impact should have appropriate tree surveys, impact assessments, and related studies before just going ahead. These are the findings. So this is the Crown right-of-ways. This is what's already been destroyed. So that's nearly 900 trees in Darkali and the Youth Center in Bliss Forest, a number of species. Nothing's been destroyed on the ring and radials yet. Hopefully, let's see. Youth Center destroyed trees. The alternatives have been employed. So I'll show you the alternatives in a moment. In comparison, so we've got 186 trees, we've got 48 trees, we've got 44 species. Okay, here I haven't. But in Darkali, there'd be 88 instead of 712. This is because there's a lot of areas in Darkali there's a lot of natural regeneration going. So that's with evergreen species, which is really dense. It's maturing basically. But this is the amount that would be if you were to clear for the entire stretch of Darkali. This is not just the 80 meters that's been done. It's what's been done so far with the JCB is 80 meters by 7.5 meters, more or less. And that's taken these many trees out, including understory. If you were to follow the other way, you'd be doing that, including the entire stretch. Okay? Existing trees that would be destroyed following the current proposal on the Crown. So it's 4,586, including some understory. The reason to include the understory is to give a more balanced view. But it's broken down further down in the report so that it's not just, I'm not just giving a random number. There's actual reasoning how we came to that number, and it's very conservative, actually. 30 minutes, huh? Okay. Sorry? I didn't hear the 30-minute one. I'm at 45 and I'm at how many slides? 32 of 54, oh dear. Okay, so let's go through it quickly now. Integration should have happened. The alternative proposals have a lot of merit. There are a lot of mature trees that have been removed that were actually planted as avenue trees on the Bliss area, for example. So they were more than 20 years old. They were planted along where the Crown was marked before. There's no integration of vegetation in the proposed projects. All assets are wasted. It's financially and ecologically more viable to integrate vegetation development plans compared to replanting everything, as mature specimens provide significantly more benefits than newly planted trees. So this has been proven on development schemes where you have trees, you're much better off trying to protect them during the development. It's much more worth it in the long run than flattening everything, doing the development and putting in new species, new plants. There's a lot of trees that are under the 45 minutes you said we're at? Wow, okay. There are a lot of trees that fall under conservation status along this area. A lot of them are not even entered in, so they don't have a status in there. They're not even on the list in the IUCN, which is like where you find endangered, vulnerable species, critically endangered, and all that. They're not even on there. So it's not to say that they're all rare. It's just to say that a lot of this data we don't even have yet. So on an international basis, a lot of them are under CITES, and some of them fall under the Scheduled Timber Tamil Nadu Forest Act of 1882. Okay. This was the alternative of Darkali. You can see it deviates, but not by much. Again, if you want to recap on that. This is the youth center. This is a study that I did for TDC, commissioned by TDC, within the residential zone. That was with you guys. This was also in the residential zone. This is luminosity, I think. Realization, Prayatna is over here. So this is just to consider the trees within that development project for structures that would be built. And this was when we were commissioned to do the study for the 3-meter access for the HT line along the Bliss and YC stretch, which during the EIA, the recommendation was to follow the road. This was a 3-meter wide thing. The reality, so what I'm asking here is, we're considering where structures would go, but can we also do that where infrastructure will go and roads? Because we're talking about infrastructure, aren't we, anyway? We're talking about green infrastructure and gray infrastructure. So we need to weigh them up. We can't just say, well, green infrastructure doesn't matter. Gray infrastructure is really important. That's all I'm saying. So this was a 3-meter access. We're actually looking at a 16.7 meter wide right-of-way now. So I don't know why we did a study for a 3-meter access when we're actually talking about 16.7. Why we were asked to do that. Like I said, there were some avenue trees that were planted along that stretch. They're gone now. They can't be replaced. A lot of these trees that we're talking about here, a lot of the evergreens certainly, you can't buy them in nurseries. You can buy them locally sometimes. You can buy them in Orville nurseries. It depends on who's been sowing what. But you certainly can't buy them of any significant size. It's not able to purchase them. They are not available. So you can't compare them to lampposts. If this was full of lampposts and we would have decided, hey, we're not going to smash these lampposts, right? We're going to move them, or we're going to, okay, we can destroy them, but then we can buy them again. We can't buy those trees again. So all I'm pointing to here is we have a lack of understanding of the asset values of what we're talking about here. And that's not a bad thing. It's just it shows where we're at, no? I mean, it's not great. This is the study that we used to figure out what we've got along the ring and radials. This is iTree canopy. It's been developed by David Nowak of the USDA. It's been used all over the world. It's been used in New York. It's been used in London to identify the canopy cover of these cities. It's been used in many other places. Basically, it uses random sampling method to show you a Google image, satellite image of an area, and then you basically say what's there. Is it a tree? Is it soil or bare ground? Is it an impervious road? You can decide the data that you're looking at. So basically, there was hardly any grass. There's hardly any impervious buildings. Most of it is canopy cover, so tree or shrub, or soil or bare ground. I used 450 points, which gives me a certain accuracy. So the final result was that we have 69.56 canopy cover in that area, okay? Plus or minus 2%. This is what's generated automatically from this report, from this program. It's a free program anybody can access. You can use it. This is on the web browser that you do this, provided by the US government, basically. These figures are using US statistics, but they can be applied to get a rough idea, basically. You know, you're looking at 24 million rupees worth of CO2 stored in trees. It talks about the air pollution benefits. These are the existing trees. So basically, the reason I wanted to use this is because we couldn't survey the place. It's way too much work. We've got other things to do also. And but it gave me an idea. It gave me a comparison to be able to then calculate how many trees we were looking at, what sort of vegetation, which ended up me getting to 154,000 trees, including shrubs. Okay, so 5,268 of trees that are above 12 centimeter in diameter. From that, I can give you, calculating that it's 69% canopy cover. So it's just to give people a rough idea. I didn't do any quantification with regards to the costs that we're removing if we were to remove this, but they are quite significant. I did a really rough thing last night on my phone saying, oh, maybe that'll be an idea. You're looking at 10 million rupees, 2 million to 10 million rupees, depending on how you want to look at it. Plus or minus, this is a super rough calculation, okay? Other perspectives.
Not good.
Very quick, from a different point of view. This is a galaxy concept. This is a galaxy concept with the parks, right? This is existing land use with regards to forests. This is something that Lara Davis and myself worked on very briefly. We were have been for years trying to go into a proactive stance with regards to the forest group so that we're actually able to provide something that's looking forward rather than just what's there and being reactive. So far in Orville, a lot of what we do is all reactive management. We're not doing proactive management. So this is kind of looking in that direction. It's just to give an idea. It's to give an idea to us also so that we have an idea of what's there, what do we do, what should we do, where are we. These are the zones for, these are the waterways. So obviously there's a lot of water going down there. This is to show that you can have significant amount of water here also. This is all sheet water. I'm guessing you'd had the water presentation already by Giulio or by Gilles. So you're probably familiar with this. There's a big percolation zone around here, if I remember right. So it's just, basically to integrate. What does the galaxy concept look like? What does it look like based on what we've got? Land use. What makes sense? From a runoff point of view, from a percolation point of view, we're better off having vegetation where the water goes into the ground. Where instead of putting a building there, you make it so that the water percolates. And also from wildlife corridors or habitat corridors. So that we're just, these are just ideas to start thinking about what does it mean? Should we be connecting these places? Should we be thinking about this? Can we integrate this without changing the master plan? Does it work that can be integrating these ideas to look at it from a sort of broader perspective? Okay, 50 minutes, dear. 36.1 canopy cover in Tampa. That's the highest on the recorded of the international. If you want to easily get a city that has a canopy cover that's already in there, you can look for Tampa. It's there. Its density is 1,300 people per square kilometer. This is the capital of Kerala. I don't know what the canopy cover is there, but it looks significantly more. Their density is 4,500 people per square kilometer. Here, including the greenbelt. So if we're not separating the city from the greenbelt, we'd be getting 2,500 per square kilometer. So it's just to show that we can have green and we can have people and we can have population, and we'll just have much better living conditions from an environmental point of view. Finally, we're at the end. I was counting 1 minute per, half a minute per slide for some of them. So trees are, my main thing here is that trees are assets in the form of green infrastructure and should be considered as such. It's very simple. It boils down to that. I think we have a social responsibility to clarify what we're talking about, because I think we're talking about different things, even though we think we're talking about the same things. People talk about green, people talk about canopy cover, people talk about the city of the future. What does all of that mean? So we have a social responsibility. We've got social scientists that can figure it out, that we can actually see that we're actually on the same page. Do we need to, do we want open spaces? Do we want dense spaces? Do we want a combination of the two? Do we want gradients from super wild forests to super manicured lawns? Do we want to see, something in between? Do we want to prioritize form, or do we want to prioritize function, or have a bit of both? What does a park mean in Orville? I'm sure it means a very different thing to everybody. Thank you. That's it.
I just was wondering, how do you go through Indian cities? Like, did you cringe every time you see a tree on the road? Or what happens? Because when I go through Chennai and I see all these trees, embedded in concrete, I've seen trees in a temple embedded in concrete.
What happens when you go to a city and you see beggars all over the place?
Yeah, but they look happy. Seriously, they have green leaves, and they're all venerated.
We're in societies where we have to try to make the best of the situation. And so the reality is what it is. What do you do with that reality? Do you go home and cry all day, or do you just try to do your best and move on? That's all I can say, because that's people chopping the trees to maintain the electric lines. Everybody's losing. They're doing it in the. It's more work. It's less long-term management. I mean, it's more long-term management. It's just it means they're structurally unsound. It's a mess. So that's why we're trying to bring education in this subject, but it'll take a while, I think.
I agree. I mean, your presentation is really like the ideal situation. But I think like human beings, like trees also like adapt, Everywhere we just adapt. We live in cold climates, -20 to +50, and we still flourish. So I'm saying this is really good, but I guess everywhere we'll just have to, for Orwell, we'll have to find some kind of compromises, or maybe compromise is not a good word, adaptation.
This is the best case scenario.
Yeah,
this is the worst case scenario.
Right,
Let's try to aim for as much as we can, but we're going to be in that. We're not going to be there.
No, but
that's
it's good
sure.
to know that's where we can aim at. But yeah.
No, there's a lot of costs involved in a lot of, especially in fully urban settings, you're going to have really high costs. In some cases, it doesn't make any sense. It really depends on the situation.
Just to say that we are prioritizing the questions from the Dreamweaving architects.
Hi, Island. So I am actually, all of these lectures, many of them are new to me. Okay. So I'm actually, for me to see the level of expertise that we have, the studies that has been done before, from the mobility yesterday to the water to energy and to this work on trees and the green infrastructure. Has there been any integrative design process before in which 5, 6 of these multidisciplinary expertise sitting on one table and trying to find where is the space that works for all of these systems, or this didn't happen before?
Not in my understanding.
Okay,
I think
this is what we should be doing now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Yeah.
This is pioneering.
Maybe one more question.
Thank you, Islan. A couple of years back, Johnny and Jesse produced this Citizen One play. Did you see that?
Citizen One.
Citizen One. No, Citizen One. No?
Yeah, I know which one you mean.
Yeah, this one had a theatrical portrayal of what is happening right now with the road and the trees. So, and the conclusion of that play was that we must start transplanting trees. Right. One of the conclusions was that. So, in that framework, how many of the trees that we felled could have been transplanted, and how do you decide what tree of what age, what height, what is the criteria?
The reality is we don't know, which is why over a year ago I wrote a project to the project coordination group to get a tree transplanter made, which we've just gotten the funding for now. So with this, we're going to be able to identify, starting on a small scale, what can be transplanted relatively small. So we're not looking at tiny, tiny trees, but there's a little bit of that that's already in place so that we've got a sort of reference. But there are some things that you just cannot transplant, even if they're this small. So it's a question of understanding the species, understanding the condition that they're in, and eventually you can transplant really big trees. You can see, if you go on YouTube, you can see 250-ton transplantation where they take rain trees and they transplant them using these massive machines and hydraulic systems to lift the whole thing. The thing is, those trees you can transplant. A lot of the trees here will have taproots. So if you cut the taproot, there's a very good chance that you can't transplant them. So a lot of the trees that we've got here, I don't know. And that's why we've got this thing. We need to study, we need to make these studies to be able to see what's possible and what's not. So we're there, that's where we're at.